Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Eat Well, Feel Well. I am Dr. Brittany Panico, board certified rheumatologist in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And I am your host of Eat Well, Feel Well, a weekly video series highlighting nutritious recipes and anti-inflammatory ingredients to help you and your busy family eat well and feel well. Today, I have a special guest, Dr. Marissa Toussaint from New York, Anise Medical, and she is here to help to go through a recipe with us and talk about her background in culinary medicine. She's certified in culinary medicine. And I just thought it would be really, really awesome to bring in a guest and have another physician talk to us about how we can eat anti-inflammatory ingredients and make them delicious and fit into our busy schedules. So welcome. Tell us a little bit
Thank
about yourself.
you. Great. Thank you for having me. I'm so
Yes.
excited to be here. Thanks for that introduction. As you said, I'm a family physician by training, and I'm certified in culinary medicine. I am also board certified in obesity medicine. So my practice kind of integrates all of that. I do primary care as well as lifestyle management and weight management are my specialties. And so one of the things I love, love, love talking about is how to bring in food as medicine, and how to, bring all of the scientific facts that we know about healthy eating and anti-inflammatory principles into the kitchen, into practical ways. And so I'm so happy to be here and excited about talking about this recipe today.
Yes, and thank you for being here. So we sort of have similar backgrounds in the sense that we both went to a conference called Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives, and we'll talk about a recipe today from that conference. And that's where my journey as a sort of culinary perspective started. I was always interested in food and how that impacted our bodies. And as a rheumatologist, we talk so much about what products are pro-inflammatory or sort of speed inflammation, and then what ingredients can help decrease inflammation. And so this conference has a very special place in my heart about just really educating and empowering people from all backgrounds, dietitians, nutritionists, physicians, even residents, people in medical training, PhDs. There's chefs, cookbook authors. I mean, there's so many people that come together during these conferences to really share our knowledge about what food means to our bodies and why it's so important that we be mindful of our nutrition and how the products that we're eating affect what actually happens inside of our body. So I think it's really awesome that we get to talk a little bit about that background and then share the recipe that we have that you picked out for us today.
Yeah, no, that conference is phenomenal and it's truly inspirational. It's great we have that in common. And so besides the fact that you're sitting amongst great people from multiple disciplines, it's also, if you're a foodie like me, a great culinary experience too, because you don't just hear about the science and the evidence, you get to eat examples of some of the foods that the chefs and the dietitians and the physicians have kind of come together to write recipes for. And so the recipe that we're going to talk about today, we actually was served at one of our meals. And so then you get this recipe book with all of the recipes that are sort of featured or highlighted in the Napa Valley at the conference at the Culinary Institute of America. And so if you had told me, I have a personal journey where I kind of come into this for my own health reasons as well. And if you had told me that I'd be eating kale 5 years ago, I would have called you a liar.
Same
But
here
I
with
had,
me.
so like, yeah, so at lunch I had this, I said, this salad is so good. Like I would not have picked it on a menu for sure. And so this was one of the first ones that I decided to try when I came back from the conference in February. And so, so when you and I talked about doing this, this was the one that I thought would be great.
Yeah, well, take us through the recipe.
Okay, so the name is Cauliflower, Kale, Endive Salad with sun-dried tomatoes, green olives, and almonds. Totally self-descriptive, very long name. So, and there are lots of ingredients in there that are anti-inflammatory, right? So the greens, first of all, the kale and the cruciferous vegetables, cauliflower, very, very high in fiber, also very anti-inflammatory with the cruciferous vegetables. We also have endive in it, so so more greens. And then we have the tomatoes, which are anti-inflammatory, but also are like acidic. So it's balancing sort of some of the bitterness from the kale and the endive. There's olives and olive oil. I think one thing that you could tweak in this recipe is that you don't necessarily need the olives, but you could certainly play around with it and see what your preference is. And then it has almonds. So almonds have healthy fats, so the polyunsaturated fats, which are also anti-inflammatory and very good from a cardiovascular perspective. But also from a nutrition standpoint and an eating experience, right? It's very satiating.
Yes.
It's got healthy fats and almonds. So, sometimes I have patients who say, when I eat a salad, I don't feel like I've eaten, or I don't feel full. And I think this complex interplay, layering of flavors, layering of textures, okay? So the crunch, the soft, the and in a spectrum of sizes and morsels in your mouth, create an experience that is gratifying, and also you want it to be satiating or fulling. So that's what I like about this. So should I read the ingredients?
Sure. Yeah, we can just go through the list of the ingredients and then kind of, how you combine them.
Okay, sure. So the ingredient list is actually broken down. There's a section for the dressing and a section for the salad. So, and the one thing I will say, when you're making this, is that the dressing you're going to have more dressing than salad. So you can adjust this amount, or you could make the dressing and save it for later for a different salad. It really is a versatile salad dressing. So there's so the one thing that is missing, it calls for sun-dried tomatoes. So you have a choice here. You can buy commercially prepared sun-dried tomatoes that are usually preserved in olive oil. And the oil that it's sitting in, you use for the dressing. Or you could make your own sun-dried tomatoes. Does take a little bit of extra time, but sometimes what I do is, because I actually prefer the taste when I make it myself, is I take my favorite tomatoes, cherry or grape tomatoes, and just sort of brush them with olive oil, sprinkle a tiny bit of salt. You don't want too much salt because it's going to concentrate in the oven, and bake it in the oven at 250 for about 2 or 3 hours to your desired doneness. That's what I do. And then I just submerge it with oil at the end for storage, and then you can keep it for about 4 or 5 days in the fridge.
Okay,
you
that's
can also
awesome.
you can also freeze it if you want to keep it longer, but in the fridge I wouldn't recommend more than a few days. Okay, so those are your sun-dried tomatoes, and you're going to use the oil that it's sitting in for the dressing.
And that'll be more flavorful also, having already sort of marinated with the tomatoes.
There you go. Yes. So we're marrying all the flavors together. And then the other item is garlic. So adding to the flavor profile. You're going to have a highly flavored oil. It's going to be subtle, but it's going to be nice.
Mm-hmm.
So the oil that has the tomato flavors, you're adding garlic, and you're going to cook the garlic over low heat in the oil.
Mm-hmm.
And so that releases some flavors. Dijon mustard, and red wine vinegar. So the making your own salad dressing is something that I love to recommend to my patients, because it's once you get the hang of it, it's
Mm-hmm.
easy, and you avoid lots of sodium that may be added and other additives that
And
sometimes
sugar.
in sugar, and you can save money.
Mm-hmm.
So their ratio is a little different. Usually the general guide is 3 to 1, the ratio between the oil and the vinegar, but you can play up or down with that ratio as you need to. So they've got the oil from the tomatoes, the vinegar, and then the mustard. Mustard has two purposes here. It's adding flavor, but it's also an emulsifier. So it helps to
Mm-hmm.
marry them together.
Mm-hmm.
Salt and black pepper. That's it. That's your dressing. The other ingredients for the salad, we have kale, salt as needed, a little bit of olive oil. You could use plain olive oil here, or you could use the olive oil from the tomatoes, arugula, endive, cauliflower, green olives, and then the tomatoes and almonds at
Mm-hmm.
the end. All right. So, so we talked about making the dressing, and when you cook the garlic in the oil, you want to make sure that you let it cool first before whisking the other ingredients together.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can use it right away or put it in the fridge until you need it. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to highlight this because, sometimes we don't have a lot of time. And
Mm-hmm.
so I like to sometimes, decide what steps I can make ahead of time. And
Yes.
so if salads sometimes can be so consuming with lots of cutting and chopping and mixing and all of this. And so this is something you can make ahead of time. You can
Mm-hmm.
do it as part of your batch prep on the weekend, and then just kind of store it.
Yeah, that's
Um,
great.
yes. So, moving on to the salad, one thing I want to talk about is kale,
Mm-hmm.
and the technique of massaging the
Yes.
Kale.
Yes.
You
I'm glad you
massage your
brought that
kale?
up.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So kale is great for from a nutrition standpoint, and is really, as I mentioned, full of flavor, fiber, and antioxidants.
Mhm.
But for some people, it can be difficult to digest.
Mhm.
It can lead to bloating, and some people also don't like the bitterness. And
Mhm.
so massaging is a solution for that. And massaging is basically just gently rubbing the leaves of the kale. You can cut them into like inch-sized pieces or larger, or you could just break them with your fingers. And
Mhm.
you can massage with or without oil.
Okay.
So you actually still get the effect of massaging it if you don't use oil. So for
Mhm.
people who want to reduce their consumption of oil, you can still do this. And you're literally just rubbing the leaves until they soften.
Mhm.
Um, Generally, it takes about 2 minutes. 5 minutes is fine as well. And, and you'll see the difference.
Yes.
It starts to become a little bit translucent,
Mhm.
and softer, and the taste is different.
Yes. I find so my experience with kale, raw kale is tough. It's hard to sort of chew. It's the taste, like you said, it can be very bitter. And
Hmm.
it's a texture thing, right? You look at it
Yes.
and it looks like it should be a softer, crunchy lettuce, but it's more chewy and it's very dense. So, but getting a kale salad at a restaurant is always such a better experience. And I learned about that massaging technique as well, you know, to help kind of soften up the leaves. And also, do you de-stem it or just not necessarily use the stem when you make salad, or incorporate more of the stem as well? What do you think about that part?
Yeah, I think it's a personal choice.
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't eat the stem. It's not my preference when I'm eating a salad, but I certainly will cook with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they do soften up a little bit on the stove. So if I'm cooking kale, I use the stem. But if you want to use it in your salad, you absolutely can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think just sort of like learning the technique of the product is really important too, because sometimes when we follow a recipe and it doesn't necessarily, like, let's say, you know, you're really excited to make this recipe and it doesn't really taste the way that you sort of envisioned. I think
Hmm.
we shouldn't lose confidence in, you know, trying it again and trying to modify it to the way that we prefer, right? So if you
Yes.
like more of that crunchy bitterness, then massaging it less, versus if you're somebody who likes it softer, then spend a little more time doing that,
Yeah.
and just developing your own preference of what, you know, tastes good to you, so that you reach to make something like this rather than, you know, a packaged, again, kind of sugary, less nutritious salad.
Yes, absolutely. It's all about sorry, modifying it for your preferences.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
And I love that
Um,
this recipe too. It sort of crosses the seasons. It's not necessarily something that's dependent on spring products or fall products, right? It's something that we can make
mhm,
roughly year round, especially with that tomato technique that you talk about, you know, drying your own tomatoes is wonderful, because, you know, if you put them in a little ball jar, we can use them for all sorts of other dishes as well. So same with the salad dressing, you make it ahead of time and then you have, you know, a couple days worth of dressing that you
mhm,
can use in different types of salad, and you know, even as like a dip or something like that, you know, a sauce.
mhm.
So thinking about how we can repurpose those ingredients is really helpful too, because grocery shopping, right? We don't necessarily want to buy a bunch of things that we're going to use once and toss the rest of. We want to buy things that we're going to then repurpose throughout the week to
Yes.
reuse and continue.
Maximize our budget and our
Yes.
efforts.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm totally for that.
Well, great, great. And we'll post a picture of this salad, and I've had it as well. It's a great salad. I definitely, it's very refreshing. That salad dressing brings in, like you said, the, you know, acid and the balance between the crunch of the almonds and the different textures of the different, you know, greens. It's very appetizing, and like you were saying, incorporating multiple textures
Mhm,
does make us feel fuller as well. So you're not just eating lettuce and dressing, or lettuce and tomato and dressing. You're
mhm,
having an actual, you know, meal full of very nutritious things. The cauliflower adds, you know, a lot of that satiety factor as well.
mhm.
And you can, you know, add more if you prefer, use less if you prefer. It's all developing that balance of, you know, what you have on hand. If you don't have exactly, you know, the 2 cups that it calls for, that's no problem. You know, we can
Yeah.
still make do with what you have. And also, you know, if you're, let's say, you know, you happen to be wanting something specific, or sunflower seeds, or, you know, a different type of nut, a pine nut, let's say you have pine nuts
Yeah.
at home, you know, we can use things that you already have too, even though it calls for a certain ingredient.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. I agree with that 100%. And I'm in New York City, and our kitchens are microscopic, and I don't always have a lot of room, and neither do my patients, for storage.
Right.
And so it makes sense. It's a common sense thing, but also when space is a premium and there are budget concerns, I absolutely support making substitutions whenever possible. Nuts are great, greens you can substitute, you can add things, or sort of tweak things as you need to. This
Hmm.
is a highly adaptable recipe.
Yes.
One other suggestion I wanted to just kind of comment on is the cauliflower.
Hmm.
And this recipe calls for it to be steamed, which is great because steaming cauliflower, you can go to your desired doneness. So if you
Mm-hmm.
like it really soft, you can steam it longer. If you want it with some crunch, you can just do a really quick or a brief steam.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my preference is roasted cauliflower.
Yes, yes, mine too.
That's my ultimate. Like to me, it just transforms the taste,
Mm-hmm.
the flavor, and it really um brings out a different taste profile for the cauliflower. So
Mm-hmm.
I haven't tried it with this particular recipe, but I think if I were making it again, I would try roasting the cauliflower.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one thing you'll see in the picture, I always love taking advantage of the different colors of
Yes.
cauliflower. It's for two reasons. Artistically, right? We eat
Mm-hmm.
with our eyes first and our nose. So like our appetite starts from visually.
Mm-hmm.
And so we take in flavors with our eyes, then we smell, then we taste. And so all of that is part of the culinary experience. So it's visually appealing, but
Yes.
the colors have anti-inflammatory benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So the yellow has carotenoids, and the purple ones have anthocyanin chemicals. So those are all beneficial, and and they also have slightly different tastes.
Mm-hmm.
So you could play with different colored cauliflower. And I think even at Trader Joe's, sometimes you can get the florets in different
Yes.
colors. It's a medley.
Mm-hmm.
So you can try that and just throw them all in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just, I think you can play, there's a lot to play with there with the cauliflower.
Yes. And so being in Arizona, we grill a lot. And my husband makes this wonderful grilled cauliflower. So I think too, kind of using what you have, what tools you have available to you and experimenting with, again, different techniques. And something like this too is nice because I talk a lot about having your family help you prepare the meal and make the meal. So, even having small kids, you can help them learn to chop these vegetables and again teach
Totally.
them about the different greens and the differences between them and how to pick them out at the grocery store and things like that. So this is something too that I as a mom try to help teach my kids about food and
Hmm.
as we grocery shop and go through recipes together. So this one is just, I'm so glad that you wanted to talk about this because I think there are just so many things to unpack just in this salad, right? We think of salad as not,
Yep.
it's just, oh, I'm just having a salad, but salad can be so elevated in such a phenomenal way. And I mean, some of the best meals that I've experienced have been sort of around, leafy greens. And it's just great that when we teach ourselves that you don't need to have a meat product, a bread product, a salad, a vegetable to be a meal, that you
Hmm.
can put all of these nutritious components, right? There's protein even in this. And
Hmm.
you don't have to have all these other components to make a good healthy dinner for your family. And even, cooking for one or for two, these are so modifiable that it just makes it the versatility. It's wonderful because we're not limited to a certain way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I'm all for getting family members involved. And my son, I likes the massaging of the
Mhm.
kale. That was one of the things that he really enjoyed. So
And then they
um,
have pride that they contributed, right? That they're
sure,
excited to,
absolutely.
I made this dinner too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, great. Like I said, there will be pictures of the salad. So definitely try this recipe out, and feel free to modify it how you see fit. And we would love to know more about how to find you. So how can we find out more about you and your practice?
Yes. So first, let me just add one minor
Oh, sure.
correction to the recipe, and then I'll tell you about finding me. Um, the one thing that I noticed, it's a minor oversight, but it doesn't actually call out when to add the dressing to the salad. So
Mhm.
I just wanted to say that you're massaging the the kale, you're adding all of the top other vegetables, and then you can add the dressing to your desiring right when you're about to serve it, and then put the almonds on top of it. So
Oh,
hope
yes.
that clarifies.
Yes, thank you.
'Cause, yeah. Okay, so how to find me. I am on Instagram and Facebook at Anise Medical, Anise, like the spice, Medical. My website is www.anisemedical.com.
And it has lots of interesting information on it. So definitely check out your website.
Okay,
Her
great.
website. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Toussaint. I'm so excited that we did this, and more to come. So we really appreciate you watching the video today and trying out this recipe. Post in comments and show us pictures of how your salad turned out this week. All right. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week for another
Thank
episode of
you.
Eat Well, Feel Well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.